You know, I've always been envious of people who have clean breaks during life transitions. People who put in their 2 weeks notice at a job that they want to leave. They've already got something lined up, ready to start, cleanly a couple days after they finish up their previous position. They tell their employer in a politely written letter, and it's done. People who get divorced cleanly. They've got a clear 50-50 schedule. They divided their assets evenly. Nobody lost anything major. They just figured it out. I've always been envious of people who can cleanly jump from one thing to the next, where it just seems like life seamlessly moves for them, even in challenging circumstances. That has never been my life. There have been quite a few messes in my life. And today I'm here to talk to you about how to reframe that mess. How to look at transitions that aren't clean, breaks that aren't clean, and realize that maybe shame is not what you're meant to feel for that. Maybe you making the mess or getting stuck in the mess shows that you're brave enough to actually break. Welcome to this episode of Hello, my name is Jenna. And to kind of explain how I got to this conclusion, I first want to tell you about my dreams. My friends, I cannot encourage you enough to start dream journaling. It does wonders for your mind, for your memory, for your critical thinking skills, for your spiritual intuition, for your communication with your own spirit, your spirit guides,
Hey, Mom.
everything.
Mom.
Excuse me while I
Mommy.
pause for
Mom.
communication with a very earthly being next to
Terry's
me.
not watching.
See what I mean? Transitions are rarely ever clean. That's life. But I cannot encourage you enough to start dream journaling. It's a huge practical step to connecting with your own divinity, right? I talked about that, I believe, in my Alive episode, where I go over how we are so much more divine and capable and powerful than we even know. Connecting with your spirit, with the deep creative part of your subconscious through your dreams has so many health benefits. It also teaches you that your mind and body are on your side. So often it can feel like our mind is against us because of conditioning, by society or anxiety or, the ways we've been taught to hate ourselves. It can feel like everything inside is working against us, but your mind, your body, your spirit want to work with you, and beginning to track your dreams, to spend some time with them, will help you to reconnect. And it won't all make sense right away, but that's the point, is that your spirit is trying to engage with you. Your mind is trying to heal you. And the more that you pay attention to these things, the deeper you can go into that healing. And so coming back to the purpose of this episode, which is how to stop cringing at your past, part 2, I had a series of 3 dreams last night. And the first one began with Ed Milet. He is a figure, an entrepreneur who I've mentioned a lot on this podcast, who has inspired me. He was someone who I admired for a long time, but lately the division of this country has brought out some colors in him that I don't particularly care for. I've noticed he started to record his YouTube videos with the American flag in the background. And I think we all know that, especially in these times, the American flag represents something not necessarily so peaceful. It represents this sort of misogynistic, white-centered pride, no matter the cost, no matter how everybody in this country is being treated. And it's often displayed by those who are kind of mindlessly following the current regime that we're under. And so I wasn't a fan of that. He's also had guests on lately, like Candace Cameron Bure, who's openly been discriminatory and It's really disappointing to me that somebody who I admired so much is kind of coming to represent something different now. And maybe it was always there, but his focus was elsewhere. It doesn't change the fact that I respect what I've learned from him, and I'll still, take those lessons with me, but it's disappointing. And in this dream, I was at some business meeting dinner with him, and we were discussing, entrepreneurial plans, and he offered me this drink. And it was in like a large shot glass, and it was this mix of purple and red. And I don't drink in real life because I don't like what alcohol does to the brain. So that's one issue with this. But what's interesting is when he offered me the drink, the table shook. And I stood up, and the table continued to shake, and the drink slid off the table, shattered on the ground. Now, when I did some investigating into what this could mean, I realized that, first of all, the colors of red and purple represent the blood, the vitality of life, but also royalty. But since there was no ice in this drink, it was like this raw, unfiltered, form of blood, royalty, kind of symbolic of, these corporate structures that kind of have this raw, unfiltered entitlement. And it's like by offering me the drink, he was kind of pulling me into that life. This meeting, by the way, was in one of those really tall corporate buildings that have the windows where the people inside can see out, but the people outside can't see in, right? That's kind of symbolic of some of the issues of the corporate world too, right? Like, I can see you, I have all this secret information, but you don't get access to my vulnerability. I just have access to yours. And so this table shaking and shattering the glass was like my spirit rejecting this lifestyle, rejecting this kind of power, this sort of raw, unfiltered entitlement, loyalty to a certain belief system or corporate ladder, no matter the cost to others. And as I thought about this dream, it's like that glass wasn't cleanly dumped out in the sink, polished, shined, put back in the cupboard. No, it shattered and it made a mess. And as I spent some more time with this, it's like, our mess is really as bad as we've been conditioned to believe. We live in a culture where we are conditioned to engage in perfectionism, right? That we have to cleanly transition from one thing to the next, and we envy people who seem to have everything together. Well, something I've learned through my own journey is that the people who seem like they have it all together are really just hiding behind masks. And perfection is absolutely not something that we should be attaining. Perfection is artificial. It's plastic. And as we've now learned from the environment, plastic harms everything. It doesn't compost. It doesn't decompose in a healthy way. It just causes harm. And it's fake. Perfection is fake. And people who seem to seamlessly move from one thing to the other, yeah, they're probably wearing masks, but also, what has everyone the people who've lived this clean, seamlessly perfect life, what mark have they made on history? What change have they brought about? Not much, right? They're kind of just skating through life. Messes are where growth happens. When something shatters, it's broken. It can't be put back together in a false way. And sometimes things break because we don't have all the answers. We don't know where we belong or where we truly belong. We just know we can't accept that life. We can't accept that drink. And so we drop it. We let it fall off the table. We just know we can't accept this marriage. We can't accept this job. We just know we have to let it break. And maybe we need to be a little bit more gentle with ourselves when we don't have all the answers. Because here's the thing, breaking is really difficult. breaking what you were conditioned to do, what you were taught to do, what you were taught to ignore, especially what you were taught to stuff, things related to moral injury, to allowing passive harassment and dehumanization, all that stuff that we're conditioned to ignore and just kind of suck it up for the paycheck or suck it up because it would be too hard to leave. Well, maybe we should be gentler with ourselves when we know we have to leave, we know we have to break it, but we don't know the next steps. And it hurts. When things shatter, it hurts. It's scary. In the dream, I was nervous. I was embarrassed. It shattered. But upon further reflection, I thought, because that broke, I had to build something else. I've told you before that I left teaching in a messy way. And as I've come to learn, because like I've said, spiritual things have layers, all these dreams that I've been having about being back in the classroom, knowing I shouldn't be there, but feeling like I have to teach, well, I'm realizing another layer to that is the guilt that I've been carrying, that it's my mess to clean up, the guilt that I've been carrying for leaving my teaching job in a messy way. Because I just walked out at the end of one day. I just had enough with the corrupt way that the school was being run. And I carried guilt for that. I carried guilt for leaving the mess. I carried guilt for not leaving, in the most professional of manners. I felt guilt for the students I thought I left behind. And that's something I took the burden of that corrupt system on myself. And that's maybe something that you should think about with with the things that you feel shame for. Maybe you feel ashamed about the marriage you left and the quote-unquote mess that you caused. Maybe you feel embarrassed about the financial ruin you've experienced because the business didn't work out, or you didn't know how to manage your money, or whatever it is. Is it perhaps possible that it's not all your fault and that it's not your mess to clean up? In my case, I was not the one who caused the mess at the school. I was the one who tried everything I could to fix it. Just like maybe you have in your marriage, or maybe you have in your finances, but it couldn't be fixed. Sometimes when we try to fix the things that aren't ours to mend, we carry the guilt of that brokenness, when that brokenness, that shattered glass, remains. Is it possible that this is what's happening for you? And that maybe it's a type of guilt that you need to release? And here's the thing about releasing. It's much easier said than done, but here's the reality of releasing things. You can't release, guilt, shame in one meditation session. The way to truly release something is to allow your body to go through the process of composting it. If you look at a compost, you look at things that naturally decompose, they need time and the right environment to transform into something else. And there's little gifts along the way. And sometimes that transition from the mess to where you belong leads you to another mess. When I got divorced the first time, I had kind of a messy dating history because I didn't know where I belonged. I didn't know who I belonged with. I carried guilt and shame, and so I sought out more of that. I was dealing with a lot of judgment, and so I didn't think that I deserved better. And that's something that I needed to be more gentle with myself on, is the ways that I tried to pursue the right life for me when I was being met with judgment at every turn. The thing about messes is that when something shatters and breaks, you can't pretend to put it back together. You walk away from it and you figure out where you need to rebuild. I love Taylor Tomlinson's new Netflix special, Prodigal Daughter. That's a great one to check out, especially if you like my stuff. She talks about the damage that Christianity did her and some of the hypocrisy of the church, which I obviously 100% agree with, but she's a comedian, so she does it in a humorous way. But at the beginning of that special, she has an Oscar Wilde quote that says, "You will always be fond of me. I represent to you all the sins you never had the courage to commit." And I loved that. I haven't read the original Oscar Wilde piece that was, that came from, so I can't tell you what he originally meant by that. But I know what the quote meant to me. It stayed with me ever since I watched that episode. Is it possible that living in a mess, creating a mess, actually takes courage? That making mistakes, doing things that other people find shameful is actually an act of courage. Because you're trying to figure out where to plant your roots. Now, I'm not saying that I don't regret the ways that I've hurt people. I absolutely do. There's things I would never do again. But I don't know that I ever would have sought out the healing, the knowledge, the existing just at a higher level if I hadn't realized that the mess doesn't work. The only reason I know and can give advice about how escapism is not the answer is because I lived escapism for a while. I turned to that when my life fell apart, and I thought it would be the answer, and it just did more harm. But here's the thing. I plucked my roots out of the soil of escapism, excuse me, and I learned to plant them somewhere else, where they belong. That took courage. It took courage to make a mess. And then to be willing to learn from it, to learn to go outside of these shame-filled beliefs and try for something even higher. That takes courage too. Far more courage than taping on a mask every day. Again, a lot of this is easier said than done, right? Because a lot of us, myself included, just want to feel better overnight, especially when I know something is dragging me down. I just want to get rid of it. I want to cut it loose so I can move on and live my best life. But what I've learned about truly releasing, right, shedding skin, is that it's a slow process. Look at snakes. They don't always shed their skin in one clean break. Sometimes the shed gets stuck. They got to rub up against a stone or something to get it off. Or sometimes it comes off in pieces. Sometimes they need some help with getting the shed off. It's not always clean. But that's how things evolve. That's how we flex new muscles. Look at anything in nature, right? Look at butterflies and their cocoons. They don't always, hang their cocoons in the most secure of trees. Sometimes they just got to work with the branch that they got. Yet they can still evolve inside of it and emerge as the butterfly. Take a look at nature, my friends, and you won't feel so alone in your mess. You'll start to discover that evolution is messy. Think about how awkward some of the first dinosaurs looked. I mean, watch any of the documentaries on Netflix, Life on Our Planet, dinosaurs, whatever it is. Some of those things were goofy looking. But they were powerful. They were new. They were the first of their kind. They created powerful shifts of change that would lead to future life. Stop looking at masks and start looking at nature. Because we are a part of nature, no matter how much our capitalistic, materialistic consumer culture has tried to teach us otherwise. No matter how we've been conditioned to believe that perfection is evolution. It's not. Perfection is dead. Perfection will cause you to implode from the inside out. It takes courage to be in a mess. And so if you're in a mess right now, try reframing that to bravery. You were brave enough to walk away. You were brave enough to make a mistake. You were brave enough to live vulnerably enough that you could make a mistake. Perfection is death, not vulnerability. In my dream, the glass shattered because my body was rejecting this sort of corporate, good old boys, I can see you, but you can't see me sort of life. It shattered. It just shattered. It made a mess. But that was actually a form of spirit strength. That was my spirit rejecting the sort of toxic ideals of somebody who was once a mentor to me. And that's a reality we have to come to accept too, is that sometimes the people we admire are people we also outgrow, or people who maybe aren't willing to evolve with the truth. And it's okay if somebody has helped you for a while, but you see that you're not on the same path as them anymore. I still hold a lot of respect for the good things that Ed Milet has done in this world, but I do not agree with the things that he's doing now and the people that he's choosing to put in the spotlight. It's okay to recognize when maybe something you thought you wanted, or a person who you thought you wanted to partner with, maybe isn't who you want to partner with anymore. It's okay to recognize that. And so in terms of the practicality of all of this, of what to do with it, well, allow yourself the process of just opening to what your mind and your body are trying to teach you. If you're in a mess right now, just give yourself some time and space to think. Pay attention to your dreams. Listen to that part of you that's kind of calling and pulling you towards your true purpose, often something you wanted to do when you were a kid or a teenager. And allow yourself to be guided to that. And I can tell you from experience, I've been so frustrated, you've heard about it before, with all of these teaching dreams that I'm having, of going back and knowing I shouldn't be there. But it's my mind and body and spirit kind of helping me shed the layers of the weight that I carried, to shed the layers of the weight of the guilt that I made a mess when I left, and that I couldn't clean up the mess. But it wasn't mine to clean up. Is it perhaps the case that you couldn't clean up that mess because you were meant to build something much greater somewhere else that will help people more in the long term? That's certainly the case for me. I know that that wasn't my mess to clean up. And I'm learning how to take the guilt that I feel for the students I left behind and realize that I could maybe help them in a greater way, in an environment where I can actually take root and grow tall and be supported by a team rather than dragged down and gaslit into being positioned and portrayed as a whistleblower, rather than someone with moral integrity who is trying to protect those who are being harassed and demeaned. Is your mess perhaps a clue that you are meant to take root elsewhere? Allow yourself the process of recovering. It doesn't happen overnight, and just because you don't feel immediately healed does not mean you aren't healing. And here's the gift of just being human, of being a being of this earth, is that evolution is powerful. Growth is powerful. And as you engage in the healing process and allow your mind and body the time it needs to heal, there will be gifts along the way. You would be surprised what you open up to when you stop serving a plastic, artificial, dead environment. New people will come into your life who are meant to raise your actual spirit, the real you. And you don't have to be in a perfect place to receive this. You just have to begin to open. You just have to be willing to let go of the toxic things that you're putting your energy into. And so to summarize this for you, the way that we stop cringing at our past is to allow the universe to reframe it for us. Is it perhaps the case that some of the sins you have committed were your brave way of breaking away from something toxic? And even if they weren't, even if they were selfishly done, even if you did something intentional to hurt someone, well, how can you learn from that now and use the knowledge that it didn't feel good to hurt that person to create healing for everybody else? I tried escapism and I hurt people in the process. Now I can tell you that it doesn't work and that we have to be willing to engage with the mess. I'm here to help. I'm here to encourage. And remember to share these episodes. Remember to share my podcast. My goal is to bring this healing into the world through my own vulnerability. And if you have any more questions, you can always email me at jdill@lovingcreatively.com. But in the meantime, thank you. I love you. And I'm grateful that you've been coming.